Hi everybody, I'm going to talk about some work that we've been doing over the last 3 years looking at using trap crops for pest management. We've been specifically concerned in field beans with bruchid beetle and pea and bean weevil, and we've also looked at aphid populations and how they respond to the trap crops as well. So in a short time, I'm just going to give you the general themes that are coming from the 3 years of work, and there's further work to be done, but we do have some reasonably strong trends that we can talk about now. Trap cropping is quite a traditional technique, and it's used to manipulate agricultural systems. So what trap crops can do is provide differential conditions for egg laying, which is oviposition and feeding. They can divert and intercept target species, and the aim of them is to reduce the impact on the main crop. In our case at PGRO, we've used two farming systems. So one farming system is a more regenerative approach where they have a mixed flowering trap crop that includes legume species, vetch and lucerne. And on a slightly more conventional farming system, they've used a very late sown winter bean sown in January as the trap crop compared to the spring sown main field bean crop. So you're looking at different host plant species on one set of farms and different timing of the same crop species on a different set of farms to judge whether either of those approaches will be useful for managing pest species. One of the stronger themes that has come out of the 3 years of study is when we look at bruchid damage. So on the left-hand side of this set of figures, we're looking at the more regenerative approach, and these are farms that have had long-term exclusion of insecticide use and are using the mixed flowering crop trap crop, including legumes. On the right-hand side, the figure is showing the very late sown winter bean trap crop compared to the spring sown beans. On the regenerative farms, they're also spring sown beans as the main crop. But what we do see is where we've sown early, the January sowing of the field beans, that is having quite an impact on bruchid damage across the field. So you can see much higher levels in the January sown beans compared to the rest of the field. We don't see that influence where we're using these mixed species trap crops on the more regenerative farms. And that was typical across all 3 years, across all of the farms. So that's quite a strong message that we're getting from this work, is that the bean trap crop works well for bruchid management in field. One of the interesting messages that has come out of this as well at the moment, and it does need further study, is that on the more regenerative farms where they've got long-term exclusion of insecticides compared to the more conventional farming systems, we see very much lower levels of bruchid damage on those where they've excluded insecticides for more than 10 years compared to the conventional approach. So we can see from this figure here, across all 3 years, we have lower levels of bruchid damage on those farms that are not using insecticides. So this can indicate a more balanced ecosystem that leads to reduced pest pressure from bruchids. It could be related to the level of beneficials, and particularly parasitic wasps that we know affect bruchid populations, but we do need to do further analysis. We're at the end of the project really at the moment, so we're still doing quite a lot of data analysis. This wasn't consistently true for weevil populations, although we know that there are natural enemies of weevil eggs and adults, and they're also susceptible to entomopathogenic fungi such as Bavaria bassiana. So further analysis of the beneficial populations that we found in these crops is required compared to levels of damage. The influence of the trap crop on weevil populations, we saw in 2 of the 3 years that weevil damage where beans were used as the trap crop, there was an influence of the bean trap crop, in that we saw gradually declining levels of weevil damage across the field, and that was not the case for the mixed species trap crop with legumes in it. But there was no influence of the use of insecticides in terms of the numbers of weevil, the level of weevil damage we saw. For aphids, we started to see a very slight trend in 2023 of increasing numbers of aphids as we moved further away from the mixed species trap crops. So here we can see the furthest distance from the trap crop, we have the highest level of aphids. This wasn't the case where we used beans as a trap crop, of course. So this again is an area where we need to look at the data more closely. And incidentally, we also saw quite a strong relationship between the number of aphids in crop and yield. As you can see on the right-hand side figure, the higher the number of aphids, the lower the yield. So overall conclusions, late sown winter beans sown in January as a trap crop have provided a clearer impact on infield bruchid beetle pest populations compared to the legume mixture trap crops, but less consistent impact on aphids. The effects were present for weevil damage in 2 of the 3 years of the study, and bruchid damage was lower on the sites that had no insecticides used for more than 10 years. And there does appear to be an effect of a mixed flowering trap crop on aphid populations, which we know is true from previous projects that we've worked on with other organisations where we have flowering species in perennial field margins or trap crops. We do see an impact on aphid populations closer to the margin or the trap crop. We did include plant volatiles and pheromone attractants in the trap crop to try and attract the pests into them and keep them in the trap crop, but we haven't really seen any significant effects of these. So at the moment, we wouldn't necessarily recommend including those in a trap crop approach. So thanks for listening. That's me done, and thank you very much.